expertise lies in shooting. He's a professional shooting coach, but he's more than that. That's what he explained to us over the whole week. So maybe to just get everything going, what would be the key messages that you would send some kid, let's say 12 years old, and he comes up to you and he says, what's the most important thing that I should do?
Okay. Well, good morning. Like I said, or like she said, I'm a basketball coach. I happen to have created a way to teach people shooting and do player development and kind of rewired things. But if somebody were to ask me that, what's the most important thing for me to do is, I think I would start with make a decision. And one of the things I do with players often is have them define words, have them define goals. The word decision, one of the definitions of the word decision is to cut off from. It means you cut off from whatever it is that you're holding on to, make a decision as to what you want to be. Now obviously we come, the place where I coach, the players that I'm involved with are very, very driven people, and they have goals. And I go back and forth, I talk a lot about, one of the lectures I do is talking about goals and dreams. Because you hear it all the time, follow your dreams, chase your dreams. I never say that. Because your dreams are easy. When we have a dream, we're kind of the actor, the director, the producer of our own play. And when something goes wrong in a dream, what do? You just change it. And that's kind of that's not a great lesson for somebody who's pursuing something. So I always say, make it a goal. Talk it into existence, write it down, share it with people, make yourself accountable to others. Say, this is what I want. Put it out there, and then go and make it a goal. If you make it a goal, goals are things that you have to run over roadblocks to achieve. And if you're looking for at the end, we're looking for great competitors, we're looking for great achievers, that's a really good way to start. Just start with a decision, and then turn it into a goal, and proceed from there. But I'm kind of an impromptu question and answer guy, so.
Really being competitive and making shots.
Okay, that's a good question. Peter and I were chatting about a topic similar to this. There's a few different types of shooting in terms of learning. Obviously, there's the technical part when you're trying to build, and this goes for anything. It's not just shooting. It's ball handling, it's movement, it's whatever. How do you rebound? How do you cut, practice passing, etc. So there's a time when you're learning the technique of it. And then when you get a good grasp of technique, I'm a golfer too. And we always say when you feel like you're getting onto something, go put some heat on it, okay? That would be the competition. So golfers, whenever you're changing your swing, you go get in the tournament. Basketball players, when you're working on a shot, now let's put them in competition. But I think one of the questions I get often, and it has to do with shooting, is, Coach, my kids shoot like this in practice, and they shoot really, really well. And then the games come around, and then we start to struggle. Now, most of the thought is that because the game speeds up, and that there's defense out there, then obviously the shooting percentages are going to go down, which makes a lot of sense, of course, because it's much more difficult. But there's another component that I don't think people address often enough. And this is a good place to start, where you go from your technique to shooting to decisions in shooting. Because what happens in a game, and you'll see it if you watch our league, if you watch the top players in the Euro League, when there are 2 or 3 seconds left on the shot clock and the ball gets swung over to that shooter, his percentage goes up. Why? Why does that player's percentage go up? Go ahead. There's no wrong answers here. Any thought?
I think you don't need to think about it. He has to shoot it.
Exactly right. There's no more thought. I've got to shoot this, so you're clear of conscience. And when you're clear of conscience, some guys, that's a skill for it, okay? So what I do a lot is after you have a block of technique, whatever your motion, if you're teaching a motion and somebody starts to get good at it, start throwing decisions at it. So what I'll do is I'll throw a pass to a player and I'll tell him, if I have one hand up, that means shoot it. If I have two hands up, that means pass it back to me and relocate. Because what happens in games is players go through the idea of, now it's time to score. Or I'm the third best player on our team, am I supposed to get this to our best player? Should I shoot this one? Am I capable of this one? All these decisions start to go through players' heads in games, and I don't think we deal with that enough. It's very difficult to recreate that, so we have to create part of it. So if you start giving them decisions, in the clinic that we did the other day, I was messing around and I'll have kids come towards me and I'll say, okay, if I hold up an odd number, you have to fake this way and go that way, that's your play. If I hold up an even number. So you can start to just create things. What I'll do also is start asking players questions that have nothing to do with what we're doing. In the States, I'll have them come down here, I'll throw them the ball. What's the capital of Iowa? And what happens is your body slows down because your brain starts doing something else. So to speed the brain up, to help them with decisions, and then once you do that, start giving, we like to make our competitions also decision-based at times. Sometimes it's just straight up competition, me versus you, I gotta go faster, and then you start adding decisions to it. You know, if you make the wrong decision, it's minus a point, however you want to score it. But you want to add in that layer, and it really becomes an effective tool. And you'll be surprised at how quickly your players will not become just better shooters, but they will become better players. Because again, one of the things we talked about is the next evolution as to what players' capabilities are going to be have to do with balance and movement and mental processing. So anything that we can do to start speeding up people's brains is a good thing. Good question. Anybody else?
Who is the best shooter with who you worked?
Who's the best shooter with whom I've worked?
Yeah, for example.
Okay, I would probably say, for somebody that you would know, Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson's been our best shooter for the Miami Heat. And I know some of you guys are going, wait a minute, what about Ray Allen? Okay, who had that thought? Raise your hand. Okay. It's not even close, believe it or not. Now Ray, how did Ray come into the league when he came into the league? Ray was an athlete, slasher, scorer, puts the ball, and then he got injured a couple times. Had to change his game. The thing about Ray that was special, and I should say everybody that's at this level is like this. Ray was OCD, obsessive compulsive. Ray had to shoot 500 shots before every game. We put a new bus in when we go to games, called the Hall of Fame bus. Because he wanted to be there earlier so he could get any shots before everybody else. Russell Westbrook is like that. We pulled into OKC one time when we were playing Russ. Our bus comes in, our Hall of Fame bus, mind you. And Russ does this on purpose. Russ's car is parked in the illegal parking spot. You know, what are you gonna do? Tell Russ you can't park there. Right? It's my building. So he parked right there so our Hall of Fame bus could see Russ's car out there. And when our guys came walking out on the court, Russ was already out there with 5 guys going 100 miles an hour. He did that for 30 minutes. 5 guys in total sweat. But this is how great players approach things, okay? And I know the idea is to kind of manage things, make sure we're not putting too much stress on it, but to play at the highest levels, that's all it is a fire, is a pressure cooker. So Ray had practiced that shot in game 6 with 5.6 seconds left against the San Antonio Spurs after we were down 5 with 28 seconds left and no timeouts. They gave up four 3-pointers. Ray hit the back pedal 3. And that's a drill that we've been doing with the Miami Heat guys for 15 years. And everybody does it. Ray happened to add the layer where he would he'd drive and then he'd dive on the floor. Like he got knocked down. And then somebody would pick up the ball and Ray would get up and back pedal sprint and put it on him. And that was the shot we saw in game 6. How many times did you see that shot? Right? And we've seen the film of that shot. But you know how many times that happened in the game? Once or twice. and yet he had practiced it thousands of times. And Duncan's the same thing. Okay? And as far as greatness of shooting, Duncan is the kind of guy who can walk in. We do assessments all the time. This is something that's really good for your players too, is we do assessments. So we'll have people say, okay, we're gonna shoot 100 threes. And all it is you go to 5 different spots and shoot 20 threes. And just see how many you make. And you keep track of the chart. And it's not, a lot of times players will think that you're judging me. I said, well, there is some of that, but what we're doing is we're making an assessment. Let's find out where they are. And that way, the next time you do it, if we go through our practice, our technical practice, our mental practice, our competitive practice, then a week later we do 100 threes. And we see where you are. And then we start having a chart over weeks. Let's say you do it twice a week. You do it twice a week for 2 months, right? Now you have 16 times where you can assess, or 8 times, or however many that is. And you start to look at it and you say, okay, here's where we are. This is where we start. This is the peak that you've ever had. And you see what kind of line goes through. And you see what kind of consistency you develop. And the consistency is what makes people great. Now the cool thing for Duncan holds an NBA record for the highest percentage of field goals, the field goals that he made with threes. 88% of his field goals in 2020 were threes. Now folks, that record's never gonna be broken. Because as soon as he did it, the entire league changed. It changed the way they guarded him. Used to come off dribble handoffs, you grab it, shoot it. Now every time he comes off a dribble handoff, they trap him. So he had to add layers to his game. And this is kind of the next thing you can do with your players, is start to add. So I've had guys that I've taught to be able to shoot. And one guy I had with the Boston Celtics years ago, his name's Mark Moore. I had Mark for the summer. And Mark, when he went back, he was kind of a backup center he wasn't a shooter, he could only shoot about 12 feet. But we got him ready in the summer, and the next year he was the #2 field goal percentage shooter in all the NBA. And he got paid after that. But what the story goes, as I said, Mark, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna have these shots wide open for 1 or 2 laps around the NBA. Because nobody's gonna believe you. You're gonna make these shots and they're not gonna believe you. Once they start believing that you can make those shots, because you proved it over 3 months now, then they're gonna change the way their defense counts. And I had all of his counters ready. So he knew that when they started to cover him differently, here was the counter that we went to. So we do that with all of our guys. So you've gotta have a vision as to what the counters of the defenses are gonna be, and then you can start to grow. But with little ones, start working on, like I do really simple stuff, and we've all seen it now, is just passing it to the basket. You learn that motion, and you start to confuse the motion. I do a lot of really confusing of skills. So if you have an ability to jump stop, I'll make you jump stop and pass fake before you land. Then I'll make you jump and turn. Then I'll make you do a 360-degree turn. Then I'll have you dribble left hand, dribble with the right hand, take it around your back, do all kinds of crazy stuff that makes the skill harder, so the skill you're actually going to use in the game is easier. And that way people become more proficient at something they're going to use, because what they're doing is so much more challenging. Navy SEALs train like this, is that their practice and how they train is harder than anything that they're ever going to face in real life. And if we train like that, and I get it, not everybody wants to do that, but as you go up the ladder and you get better players and you're striving for more things, I think you can add more layers to what you're doing. There I go.
I just want to ask also, I saw some.
Oh, see, now. Right?
I'm
See, we created a
more
monster.
confident.
Yeah.
I saw many coaches, even in USA, say like when they shoot without this gap, or how you think? What's your opinion when you shoot this gap in the ball?
The gap in the, I don't ever talk about that.
How?
Let me explain. I don't ever say anything, I don't ever talk about that with a player. There's players that'll put their palm of their hand on the ball and they won't have a gap, I get it. But if you take a ball, where's that gift? Oh, the gift's gone, okay. So, if you wanna solve that problem, if you have a player with the palm of his hand on the ball, and you put the ball in his hand and make him do this, you can't have the palm of your hand on the ball anymore. So all you have to do is load the wrist and start there, and they're fine. Because as soon as you do this, everybody, you can do it yourself, you don't have to do it now, but if you do it yourself, you'll see there's a cup that forms in your hand, and it's natural, and it takes care of it, and we're done. Right? And I like to get to places where, if I say, here, do this, then I eliminate a whole bunch of other conversations. Because it's, to me, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. But, bravo.
Maybe Jen has the last question?
Yeah, please.
I have kids like 11, 12, 13 years old at the club, and you said that shot movement has to be straight. They're rather skilled all in basketball, in dribbling and in reading the game a little bit already at the early age, but they don't get it right for moving the hand straight to the basket. Do you have any recommendation what to do in this situation? Any type of training, any type of drills or so on?
Well, it's kind of that funny conversation is how, I haven't played darts. Okay, one of the projects that I had one of the players, that's what I did. NBA player who was a top 10 pick, and when I came to him, he was a 24% three-point shooter in the NBA. Really, really great player. But he struggled shooting. So when I came to him, he looked at me kind of a little bit dejected and thinking, this is gonna be really hard, this is a rebuild. And I said, well, not necessarily. So you're a great athlete, you're in the NBA for a reason, right? And I said, what other games do you play? You ever played this? You ever played that? You ever played this? And of course I get to that. You ever throw darts? Well, yeah, everybody's throwing darts. I go, okay, great. Show me how you stand when you throw darts. Who's left-handed? So he goes, I go, perfect. Now put your hand up there like you're gonna throw darts, and now put your other hand up there, okay? And kids will understand this, like, oh, so you just, and they say, that's how I want you to stand. Because they have that image in their head. I said this yesterday with some of the kids. I said, we remember about 25% of what we're told. We remember about 70% of what we discover. But we remember about 95% of what we teach. So get the kids to start to engage each other as well. And just say, hey, and have them start discussing that. But the next thing to do, especially with young ones, is I do a lot of one-hand stuff, but not like you'd think. A lot of people have one-hand shooting, and they'll take the ball and they'll get up here and they'll stop it and they'll work on that one hand. That's a good thing. But I'm teaching one motion, so when we teach one hand, I work really hard on being able to have the ball go smooth. Now here's the challenge. What I do with my players, and you can do it with the young ones, especially if they have smaller basketballs, it's also good to have them shoot on lower baskets. We're doing layups like that. Because part of the problem is the ball's heavy, and they're trying to shoot it on a 10-foot basket. So you think about that, the ball's heavy, so they gotta do all kinds of crazy things to get it there. And then you put defense in front of them. Make it that much harder, okay? When we're ready to make it harder, it'll be plenty harder. But what I do for one hand is I have them take a dribble, use a jump stop, and shoot it one-handed without ever touching it with the opposite hand the whole time. So the jump stop's actually like here, there. So they're required, now they have to be able to have the ball balanced in their hands to cover the center of the ball. And then take it up there in one piece. And then here's the challenge of it. I was talking to Peter about this the other day. Most people, when you're working one-hand shots, you're doing it because there's a problem with two hands. So when you work one hand and they get it, they shoot the ball well, and you go, great. Now they put their left hand back on and the same problem comes back. So you have to re-engage the left hand specifically, okay? So what I do is while we're doing that drill, is we come in and make that jump stop, and then we touch it with the index finger and the opposite hand and shoot it. And then we touch it with the back of the hand, or you touch it with a fist. Or you just, the whole point of it is we're trying to touch it with no pressure. Most of the problems come from our elbows being away from each other, our hand being off center, and creating opposing forces when we're trying to make the ball go straight. Okay. So you can kind of piece that together, and I know we have some people around that are practicing some of that stuff really well. That's a especially with young ones. Because it's, besides the fact that it's entertaining for them, because it's not easy. And then you'll find the ones that are a little bit competitive, because they'll want to try to get it right. And you'll probably be there. Anything else?
So I've got a question. I've got a girl, a shooter in a team of under 16 girl, and her technique is, I would say, not from the books, but she's making. She's managing even to start throwing 3-pointers, and she's doing, let's say, quite okay percentage. My question is, if it's worth, is there a point of changing her technique, or just encourage her of what she's doing, just unless she's making it?
Well, there are players out there that look funny. Right? Reggie Miller was one. Like, I don't think you'd ever teach anybody to follow through like that. And yet Reggie was, last I checked, pretty good. Okay? The question that because I've gone to places for consulting, and they have a very similar situation where they say, what about my kid? I would say this: if she is able to shoot all of the shots that are required of her during competition, then she's on a good path. But the issue becomes then is whenever you have a good shooter and who's a good player, that your team needs to expand the way that the number of shots that person gets. So when you're going to expand the type of shots that she'll be getting, because you're a great shooter now, like for example, Duncan Robinson. Duncan I would have come out there and he had to run in an absolute 100-mile-an-hour dead sprint. Catch shot, gone. That fast. And he couldn't do it. So we had to train him to do it. The point is when there is a time where your offense is going to change and it requires that growth for that player, then that's the moment that you would consider. You can prepare for that moment ahead of time, or start when you get there. But that would be the time. If she's able to make the shots that's required of her now, you're probably in pretty good shape. But when things start to expand and competition is going to get tougher, then you want to have all your program either ready or started for her. Because chances are, if she's pretty good, she's going to want to be able to do more anyway. So get started.
Thank you.
Yes.
On that one, is there an age where you should change the shot or not?
You know, that's a challenging question. The thing that I say is, I don't know your players. You know, a lot of it has to do with what kind of motivation they have, how much work they're putting in, how fast they're growing. Sometimes when they're young, they're going to shoot one way. You come back, like I was 8th grade in the United States. That makes you 12 or 13 years old, or 11, something like that. I was 5'1". How big is that in meters? Not very big, right? The next season, literally over the summertime, I grew 9 inches in the summertime. I walked in and people didn't recognize me. I was a completely different person. Needless to say, I shot one way when I was a midget. And when I grew up, I was ready to shoot a completely different way. So I think that there's going to be some, especially with young ones, I think it's a matter of knowing what they're doing, watching them, seeing how they grow, look at their motivation, etc. A lot of times players will be able to tell you, it's time for me to have help. Okay? I know that's not a specific great answer, but it's kind of the reality of it. So.
Thank you.
How do you deal with a player that you know has a great shot, but as soon as it comes to games, she has like a blockage and does not shoot the ball even though the defense like 5 meters away?
Yeah.
How do you make that blockage go away?
Yeah, well, clearly, part of it is finding out what the motivation of the player is. You know, some people turn down shots because I didn't feel good that day. You know, and the challenge is obviously getting through that mental block. Okay. You know, we get pretty drastic at the levels that I coach, and if somebody's turning down shots, I'll ask them, what are the consequences? If you miss it, they can't kill you. Right? Nobody's going to come out and shoot you in the head. So what is it that what are we nervous about? So one of our players had that very same thing. Hassan Whiteside, who was a 7-footer, really talented guy, and Hassan was a career 47% free throw shooter. Okay? And what what Hassan would do is we'd go into practice and I changed them and we did this and all of a sudden, okay, Hassan, we're gonna go make 10 in a row. He'd stand up there, boom, 10 in a row. All right, we're gonna go over this basket, 10 in a row, boom, 10 in a row. So I'm watching him going, okay. And in the games, he would change. So I think what happens is we need to get to that place with the player that we embrace what we're doing. If we're going out there and we're doing all this practicing to play in front of people and play in competition, at some point we're gonna have to embrace that. So at the end of our practices, the media always comes in, okay? So all the reporters, television people, they all come in and every practice they do post-practice media. And there's interviews with some coaches, some players, and et cetera. So here's Hassan, and I purposely did this because I know that the media is coming in. We have a basket that the media is over there, and Hassan has to face me at a basket over here. And I'm standing there and I'm just flipping it back there. I said, great, Hassan, after you do this, let's make this, let's make this. And I saved this basket for last. And while we were there, I said, okay, now I need you to make 5 in a row. He stepped up, make 5 in a row. And I said, after you make 5 in a row, we're gonna make 5 more in a row. That'll be our 10, but you have to walk off and reset. So he walks up, makes his 5, he turns around, and what do I know that's gonna happen when he turns around? There's the media. And he saw them. And he came back to the free throw line, and I said, okay, Hassan, what did you see? And he said, I said, you know that they're at every game you play anyway, right? And I said, you know that when we go do all this practice, there's gonna be 20,000 people out there watching you shoot free throws. Half of them are gonna want you to miss. So we should go have fun with this. You know they're gonna be there. Because I think one of the things we do is we tell players, let's block that out. Let's block that out. They're not really there. Well, yeah, they are. Because they make noise and they try to let you know that they're there, especially when you're on somebody else's court. So I think the idea is, let's embrace this. And we get over the fear. I heard this one, this is a TV show comedy thing, right? It said this one guy, he's kind of a simpleton, but he's making a point of facing your fears. If you're afraid of heights, go up on the top of the tallest building you can find and be up there. If you're afraid of bugs, that's what he said. If you're afraid of bugs, get a bug. It's kind of silly, but it makes sense. So if we're gonna play in front of people, we need to recreate that situation and we need to enjoy it. We need to embrace it. Don't go silent. Have people start yelling. And I used to do it where I would give them free throws and then I'd say, I can do anything I want to except for touch you. We do it with shooters and we do all kinds of crazy things just to get them distracted and get used to say, here's what's gonna happen when I shoot. Here's what I'm gonna feel. Let's get on with it. The basket hasn't changed. We all know that. But there's, when you have that mental block, you almost have to walk up to that barrier with them and go to the other side. Say, here's how we do it. And then after a while, and it'll take a process, some people go, God, Duncan Robinson was that guy. He was 1 for 8 from 3 his first game. And all of it was centered around, I'm not sure if I should shoot this one. Should I get it to Jimmy? And then I changed his motion so he had to shoot it so fast that his brain couldn't get in the way. And then the next game he turned into Duncan Robinson. Now, that's really high level talent, I get it. But it's the same kind of idea. Embrace the situation, see what you're gonna face, okay? Embrace it, and on you go.
My question is, you work with highly motivated adults, right?
Seemingly.
I have like 12, 14 years old kids, and they are highly motivated to just throw the ball, throwing the ball somewhere. And they are not really getting that they should score and in the right way. And how could I make them understand that sometimes it's nice also to score and in the right way, not
Right.
just throwing the ball away? That's my question.
Yeah, well, You know, I think the thing about us is when we coach highly, you know, high-level players, most of us have started with us. Because I was a little guy coming up to play. And I think that the idea of how do we get players on the same page? How do we get them understanding how the game's really played? The challenge of it, and I think some of us, I think sometimes as adults, we have a tendency to protect our kids from the pain of things, right? And there's an acronym. You know what acronym is in English? It's the first letter, every letter equals a word. And right, and to fail, we use that word all the time. To fail, got this from the Navy SEALs. It's a great acronym. There's, and I'll preface it by this. There's a world famous Hall of Fame golfer in Ben Hogan, okay? Older, but he always said, I never learned anything from a tournament that I won. And I think we get worried, you know, I know sometimes we don't keep score with things, and sometimes we tell everyone, oh, it's okay, you did your best, and try, and et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I'm in a world of, there's no try. You either do, or do not. That's a Yoda thing, sorry, Star Wars. But we live in a world of results. Okay? And if we're going to approach this and we get to that place where there's a world of results, then we kind of have to take them through that moment, that fail moment. And the acronym we use is first attempt in learning. So when you fail, I think people have a negative connotation about, oh God, I tried this, I put all this in, and I see it as an assessment. The game is the test. Here's how we practiced. This was my homework. I did my skills. We practiced. We went to the game. We lost. We go back and say, okay, what did we do? And what happens is we don't do that when we win. When we win, we think everything's okay. Then we play against a better team and we get crushed. We go, all right, hold on, we have to rethink things. But I think if you go through the process of have them like use a goal. Here's what we've got to do. And we're playing and we've got to execute however it is. You take your 14-year-olds or 12-year-olds and put them all in the game and you say, okay, we're going to play 5-on-0. We do this with our guys a lot. You're going to play 5-on-0 and you have to go down and back and down and back, and you'll be stunned running your offense that they can't run your offense with no defense out there. And then they'll throw the ball and say, and you keep track. If you execute a play correctly, you get a point. If you pass the ball 4 times and you don't turn it over, again, when there's nobody out there, you get a point. So you can start to assess, okay, we're working towards this to win. We can work towards this to get it done the right way. And then this is how we're gonna get there. And if you come down, if somebody comes down the floor and they just take the ball and they shoot it and it goes in, no points. Why? Because you didn't run your offense. We didn't execute. We didn't share the ball. We didn't involve everybody else. And then start to put together, you know, kind of steps where you can play competitively without necessarily competition out there. Competition comes in your brain. And you start exercising your brain of, this is how we're trying to do this. And when we do, we get rewarded. When we don't, you can choose how to handle it from there. That'll give you some tools where you can kind of encourage them to the place of, this is how we want to do it. And then at some point, it'll register with them, and at some point, if it doesn't, you need to move on to a different player. That's why people in our league get fired.
Hi, Coach. Last season you had guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Struss, Caleb Martin, basically unheralded, undrafted, like
7 of them.
7 of them.
Yeah.
Good job, Coach. But from a coaching perspective or staff perspective, how did you identify the areas where they could grow, or where they need to develop more? And first, how did you identify that, and how did you go about achieving what you achieved with them to be able to play, you know, in the finals?
Well, with guys like that, they're really competitive guys. And these are guys that are not entitled, anointed, that yes, you're born here. Like Victor Wembanyama is going to the NBA, right? And everybody knows he's going to be the #1 draft pick. And everybody says, oh, this is the greatest prospect in the history of basketball. And I haven't seen him dive on the floor yet. I know every one of those guys that you just named, they get on the floor pretty quick. And we play a game that's a war out there, you know? So when you're going to look for players, you look for competitive guys that are fearless. You know, you got Max and Gabe and Caleb. Those guys are, I use the phrase all the time to make the joke, those guys are hombres. You know, they are dudes. And when that ball goes on the ground, they don't think about, like, I gotta get that ball. And they approach the game that way. So once we have guys, once you identify competitors, and then obviously you're looking for a certain level of athleticism, you're looking for a certain level of IQ. Once we have all that, then we can take them and put them into this program. A lot of the balance and shooting and movement and skill work that we put together for our team, and we put them in there. And they buy in. We have a reputation, obviously, with the Heat, that people come here and they get better, and kind of, this is why. So once you start that, and you have the right kind of guy, and you're playing for the game for the right reasons. Sometimes people don't play the game for the right reasons. Some guys want to win, some guys want to be famous. And it is a job, so it's okay to have both. But that's where you got to figure out, how are you going to define how you're going to operate your team? Do I need team players or do I need individual stars? So once you have that, then it's our jobs. And I spend a lot of time with those guys saying, okay, this is how we're going to fix and help you with this. This is how we're going to help you with this. This is the kind of player you're going to be. This is what's going to be required. It kind of goes back to that question of, when do you change somebody's shots? All of those guys have gone through a lot of changes. And then they just, they can't wait. They're excited. So, but you find those guys find those kids, find the people that are competitors, find the people that are playing the game for the right reasons and want to play the game the right way. All of those players, every one of our undrafted guys, they all want to win and they all want to play the right way. They want to be part of something like that. So that's a good place to start. Well, geez, thanks for all the time.